So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Rise podcast with Kwesi Millington. Today, I'm here with a great friend of mine, Ashley Ann Pereira. I'm going to read her formal introduction, and then we're going to get into it and talk about some good things. So, Ashley Ann Pereira is a book coach who works with thought leaders to write impactful memoirs and self-help books. Ashley Ann is the co-founder of the Studio Press, and together with her team, they know what goes into creating a book that sells and transforms lives. It's about writing a book that your readers want and bringing them along for the journey the moment you decide to write a book. Ashley Ann is an award-winning speaker and has been featured on Power of Positivity, Chin Radio, What She Said, Toronto.com. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but I just wanted to get that out there. And we're going to talk about what you do as a coach and also you as a person as well. So I want to thank you for being on here because when it comes to these discussions, I like to just kind of go with it, and then we'll see what direction we head in as we talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I want to just highlight that you did your first book. This is your first book, right? A Key to Happiness. And I have to say, something that I noticed before I even got into the content of the book is that your pages, I love the way your designer did your pages. So Ashley's pages, they have that magazine feel. So they have that nice sheen feel, not like regular paper that you read in the book. Nothing wrong with that, but this was just cool. I had not seen any books written this way before with almost thick magazine quality feel pages to it. So
let me tell you a secret. That was not planned.
Oh, no? Okay.
We got the book and we're like, oh, this is cool.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I mean, I guess that's what's called serendipity, right? Something pleasant happens by accident.
Absolutely.
But what's more important is that the content is very good in the book. And if you don't mind, I want to talk about some of the things you mentioned as keys that make us happy. And I want to ask you, okay, what does it have to do with making you happy? And of course, having resilience and having that ability to bounce back from things.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them I wanted to talk about was forgiveness. And what forgiveness means is different for different people. But there's two aspects of forgiveness: forgiving other people and forgiving yourself. Tell me about what that means to you as far as your ability to move forward in life and to be a positive person doing all the things that you're doing.
Yeah. And my outlook is so much, I think more so highlighted on the external, like forgiving other people was a big part of my story. And there's always aspects of having to forgive yourself as well, right? Like, I always talk about looking at ourselves in like this bird's eye view. And, sometimes you may slip up and you do something that like you might say something, you do something that you're like, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? Right? Like that's a moment of just having compassion and forgiving yourself. But my focus is so much on the external and the people that I felt like I needed to forgive in order for me to just move on with my life. And there's a saying that I'm so almost like I'm totally against, right? Like people say forgive, but don't forget. And I don't believe in that whatsoever. I'm a big believer in forgiving and forgetting because I feel like, and I believe that the big part of forgiving and what allows you to move forward and just move forward with so much grace and healing and all of that good stuff is that letting go part, right? It's not carrying the things that have happened to us. And there's an aspect of always remembering, like you remember it because it can be a part of your story. So I've made it a part of my story, but I don't hold on to it whatsoever. Like I've completely let go of, and what this is a big highlight in the book, really the first chapter is about my relationship with my dad. Like there's no secret there. And there's just nothing. Like we can have this incredible relationship. And even if, we have an argument here or there, I don't bring up anything from the past. And that's where I feel like that is true, really letting go. And like that true step forward is when you've forgotten it. Like those emotions and everything tied is no longer controlling you. It's no longer having an impact on you. And I feel like that's the beauty and the power in forgiveness.
And I'm gonna ask you for things that have come at me, and I don't always know how to answer them, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
you can help me with that. When it comes to forgiveness, okay, yes, okay, we forgive, we forget, we let go. What do you say to someone who says, you know what, I've tried to let it go and I can't? What do I need to do specifically to,
Mm-hmm.
do I need to write down something? Do I need to say something to this person? I can't let it go. What do I do? What's the steps I should take? Something tangible.
Yeah, I think, one thing that I did for me that really helped me in my journey, in my forgiveness journey, was writing specifically, actually a letter to my dad, is how it sparked up and opened up this conversation for, us to move forward. It gave me permission, like I gave myself permission to speak whatever was on my heart. And I feel like that like just naturally gave him permission to do the exact same. And that's so important. But I would even ask yourself too, I think it's important to ask ourselves why. Why are we not willing to let it go? And just being honest about that too. There's some work and there's some awareness that you can create in why you're not willing to let that go. I feel like sometimes we go through this story that says, if I forgive that person, well, it lets them off the hook for whatever it did. But that's also the change, right? Like we always have a choice to forgive. We have a choice to let it go and to move forward. And there's a reason that you're not choosing to do that. And maybe it is that belief that you feel like if you do that, you're letting them off the hook. But ultimately, like, we can't control other people, and ultimately it's for ourselves. Like, it sounds, I hate being cliche, but it really is. Like, it's for yourself. It's for the weight that you're carrying on your shoulders. And probably you might be like, I know that there's even people in my family, they hold on to things so close from the past, and they're not willing to let it go, and it manifests into stress, into health problems, into all these different things.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you said, ask yourself why you can't forgive, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I just can't let it go. I can't let it go. And they
Yeah.
never go deeper to say, okay, well, why can't I let it go? So that's a key thing. And then journaling as well, when it comes to forgiving others. I just want to talk about forgiving yourself. What does that mean to you
Mm.
to forgive yourself? Because speaking of cliche, people will say, oh, you got to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Um, what is that, and why? Why do we need to forgive ourselves?
I think it's treating, like, just as much as I'm kind of thinking about this on the spot, because I feel like I've never like intentionally had that moment where I was like, I really had to forgive myself for that. Actually, yeah, I have. But it's compassion. It's compassion for yourself. One of the biggest moments in my life that I had to forgive myself was, 10 years ago, I was hit by a car, and as I was crossing the street, so I was a pedestrian, and that that moment really, really did change me. And for roughly about, I would say, a year, I became very angry and bitter, and I was just like pissed off. I was like, why did this happen to me? Why me? Why me? Why me? Going down this whole cycle of feeling like a victim. But ultimately, I could have easily focused on, hey, I walked out of that, being able to walk, and it wasn't serious injuries. It could have been worse. But I chose to focus on like the negative, like people not picking up the phone to call me to see if I was okay. Like,
Hmm.
there was just a really long period that I was so bitter and pissed off at the world. And my mom said something to me about a year later. She said you don't have to hate the world. And it really, it was just like almost looking at myself in the face, and just looking at how I had been acting, like the things I had said. And it was really tough to look at that in the mirror, but it was having compassion for myself to say, to just look at myself with no judgment. Like, that's where I was at, but allowing myself to say, but I'm not that person, and I don't choose to be that person who hates the world. And I think that's also part of forgiveness, is still a choice on how you want to look at things, how you want to perceive. And and just allowing yourself to say, you know what, I can let this go. Like I've learned from this. I don't have to be that person.
Yeah. And that's important to be able to say that, okay, I don't have to be a person, that you can look at even ways you used to be or things you used to do and forgive yourself. And I use what I call the 2 A's in my workshops, the admire and accept, right? So when's the last time you wrote down something you admired about yourself, right? And then when's the last time you actually focused on what I accept about myself?
Yeah.
Right? And people have trouble with both. They have trouble saying, you know what, I admire the fact that I am something and something else. It's easy to admire other people, but to say I admire that I can do this, that takes a lot out of people sometimes. And also I accept in the same way. What is it about yourself that you would like to change, but you can accept? And if you're okay with it, I want to talk about body image with you, because you have had your own journey with, body image, weight and whatnot. Take me back to where you were when you were judging yourself for that, and where you've reached now, because you write a lot of posts on your Instagram, and we'll talk about that after, about loving yourself and about where you were and how you feel about yourself and your body now. Tell me about that.
It's funny. I remember bits and pieces of certain moments that, like, for example, I remember this one time having to go to the mall and, shopping for clothes that were very, like, even just searching for a dress to wear. This is what it was about. It was searching for a dress to wear, I think for my sister's, like, graduation or something like that. And I remember just looking at myself in the mirror and obviously showing my sisters and my mom my outfit, coming out of the changing room, and I hate it. I don't know what it was. I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. I felt so uncomfortable. I felt like, and honestly, like, it's not like I'm coming from a place that I've been, like, overweight and I had this, like, weight loss journey. It's not that. It was like having curves, and I don't even know what sparked this. That's the thing that I feel like I've been always trying to pinpoint, is where did this come from? Why did it happen? But I mean, obviously everything happens for a reason, but I remember being in this changing room and just, like, leaving the store, just bawling my eyes out, like, not wanting to I was over it. So I've always had a struggle with wearing dresses.
How old were you then?
I must have been grade, like, 8, like, what is that, 13, 14. So I was very young, and I struggled throughout elementary school. So very young with this, always wearing jeans, sweatpants. Like, I disguised all of that with being a tomboy. I said, oh, I'm a tomboy. That's why I don't like to wear dresses. I don't wear shorts. I don't wear any of that. So in the midst of, like, summer heat, I am wearing pants. Like, that's just how bad it was.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah. And, I really just, anytime I looked at myself in the mirror, I avoided it, and I would just cry. Like, that's what it was. It was just me crying, looking at myself in the mirror. And it was probably roughly, I would say 2013, 2014, when it was like a health and wellness challenge that I went on. And that was, like, the one thing I had been working on more so, like, my mindset and going on this own healing journey. And then I went into this health challenge, and it was just, like, literally the things that you're feeding your body, like the eating better, all of that fun stuff. And I had this moment about, like, a month in, 30 days in. And I was able to look at myself in the mirror and actually smile and not cry, not look at myself in disgust. And at this point, I'm in, like, college. So it was a while.
And what happened in that moment? You said you just had a moment when that happened for you. Was there something that led up to that? I mean, because I think a lot of people, especially, if I was talking to teen girls, if they just hear you, okay, I had a moment and I didn't hate myself when I looked in the mirror. Okay, well, where was your mind at, and what's something that other people can do to get to that point, if it doesn't just come to them like it did to you?
Yeah. So there was definitely, it wasn't just like, it's not like this, like, overnight moment that it just happens. There had been things leading up to. So a lot of it was this personal development aspect. And for so long, I was so focused, so focused on what I was seeing physically in the mirror. And I was neglecting looking at, kind of like we were just talking about, like, what do you admire about yourself? What do you accept about yourself? I shifted my focus consciously to say, you know what, forget about what I see in the mirror. I won't look at myself in the mirror. I'm not going to be concerned about this physical body. And I'm going to focus more so on finding my purpose. And that was the one thing. It was finding purpose in my life, like just thinking about, what do I want to do in this lifetime? Like, what do I stand for? And for a while, when I was at the very beginning of this, it was, you know, I had this desire to go and volunteer abroad. That's all I was focusing on, was doing something bigger than my life, doing something bigger than this moment right now. Gave me this like confidence, gave me this purpose that I wanted my life to mean more than just being someone who was struggling with like this physical body. And it was just like working at that every single day. And that came down to reading books. And that's really what has been like the culminating factor. Was I started listening to personal development. I started diving and immersing myself into personal development, and purpose was the thing that I feel like really changed, because I started to see a little glimmer of confidence whenever I was thinking about purpose and just thinking about like the dreams that I had. And that's where it started. It was just that little glimmer. That was a little turning point that allowed me to shift.
So yeah, you were able to shift on something, focus on something other than yourself, and something
Exactly.
bigger than yourself. So instead of just looking at, okay, well, why do I have these curves, or why do I look like this? You just change your focus to, what can I do that's bigger than this?
Yeah.
And I think that's huge for people, because we get so focused on the little things and that don't matter that much, and then all you need to see is a bigger story, and it kind of puts it all in perspective, right? It's like,
what you focus on grows.
That's
right.
That's right. And that's so important, focusing on something else. And you talk about self-love in your book, and you talk about awareness. And I wanted to talk about closing chapters.
Okay.
And you said that sometimes you have to close a chapter in your life to kind of move forward, to something better or something bigger. Why do we have to close those chapters? Like, why is that so important, to moving on?
Oof. You know, it's funny because I know exactly what chapter you're thinking about, and I'm like just thinking about like the people and the stories that are included and attached to where I learned this, like where I learned that in order for me to, like, it's kind of that concept of like things holding you back, right? And there might be, so, you know, that chapter specifically, there was like two specific people that I think about, and one was actually like a relationship, and one was more so a friendship. And you know, I'm such a big believer in your environment. You know, your environment can really allow you to see success or allow you to kind of be stuck and plateau. Who you surround yourself is who you become. And that's really where, you know, I took this difficult time in trying to, in having to release relationships that they just weren't working. Like it just wasn't working. And we both needed to be honest with each other about that. And again, it just allowed me to open up into, you know, if I was stuck trying to like build a relationship that just wasn't working, you know, you're trying so hard, putting kind of still like focus and energy into this, and it's not meant to be. You're blocking yourself from possibly experiencing another relationship that can allow you to flourish. You know, if I was stuck trying to mend this relationship, this like more intimate relationship, I wouldn't be in the relationship that I'm in right now.
And that can apply to a lot of things. I mean, I think a lot of times we think of, okay, it being a love relationship, but it can be a work relationship. It can be even a project that you're working on. So something that we can use the metaphor of a relationship, but you need to close the door on this project you've been trying to take off the ground for so long, or this business over here that you were trying to just, you wanted to launch this one, and all of a sudden you have to close that door to be able to move on and do the business you're supposed to do. And that's why I wanted to have you on as well, because I think a lot of times people are stuck, and it's not necessarily in a relationship, but they're stuck in life, and they're like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. And it's blocking them from doing something else. So tell us how that applied to you going from a business that you were moving towards and you were doing to what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is, right? Like so my kind of my journey, my progression to really even writing this book in the first place was I was speaking. I because of network marketing, it's kind of also how I was involved and got involved into personal development and opened this door. I started public speaking, and then I entered myself into a public speaking competition, and then I started doing more speaking, and then the book came. And so the interesting thing is I was thinking that because of the content and what I was talking about in my book, and it was, about my story, but I was teaching these things. I really wanted to, again, even though that I was 24 when I published this, there was concepts that I had learned that there was nobody talking or teaching me this when I was in high school, and I had just learned these things. I could save myself from so much like suffering and so much unhappiness. And that's why I wrote the book in the first place. But here I am thinking that, my path is meant to be this inspirational, motivational speaker and also a coach. Like I felt like that had to be the mold to fit. And that's how I was going to create a business. Like I just didn't have anyone around me that was an entrepreneur, right? Who had done this before. And so I was thinking, well, I guess that's the path that I'm going, is I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to help people with their problems. And that's what I thought, because I also went to school for social service work. So I thought, like, this is it. But I so soon realized, so after the book happened, I had this opportunity to create a coaching program and turn my book into an online course. And I thought, this is perfect, right? Like, this is going to be what segues into me becoming a coach. And as I tried so hard, it just didn't work. I had such a struggle being able to promote it, all of that. It just wasn't happening. And part of that was just, it wasn't what I was meant to do. Like, I love having conversations like this where we can just share our stories and our experiences and our little lessons and wisdom. And I love creating a container for, if it's friends or people who just need someone to listen and to talk to. I love being that person that can just create a container. But I just don't feel good to say I'm a life coach and I want to charge you for that. It just didn't feel good, and it didn't feel aligned for me. And so, and naturally, as I was on this path of creating this online course from my book, I was thinking about, wow, I could teach essentially authors how to do this exact same thing, right? Like I can teach them how to turn their book into so many opportunities. I've done the speaking, I've done the, creating a course, I've done all of that. So there's so many opportunities and things that can unfold. And it was just this natural progression into helping people write their books, because even after I published my book, people were asking me, how did you do it? What are all these steps? And I was just learning and immersing myself. And I said, well, this is what I did. And I fell in love with that. And it felt so good. Like now that I look at it, it was almost like something that just felt so good in my gut. And I went with it and I honored it. And I said, let's do this.
So you just followed your gut, and you got asked questions. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm pulling out what I know people are going to want more of. So I'm like, let me ask you a little bit more about that. Finding your purpose, right? Finding your why, finding what you're supposed to do is like, I think the most asked question online.
I know, right?
For you found that by honoring what you felt in your gut, and people were asking you questions about something. So you tuned into what people are asking you questions about, which is a key to finding your purpose, and also following your intuition. If people don't have that, if they don't have that gut feeling of what they're supposed to do, or that natural lead in, like you had to give you a hint, if I know nothing, where do I start?
Yeah. The best thing and this was a big part of my journey as well, is trying so many different things. Like I was just that. And that's also kind of just in my design and my personality, that like, if something feels good and I just want to go with it, run with it, try it. And whatever comes from that, right? Like I've attempted so many different things, but I've also, volunteering was such a big part of a big period of my life. Like I would say in and around college, I was just volunteering at any event possible, and it was just trying all these different things. And that's what I say is also a key to start to try and figure that out. Trying to take that step forward is to try so many different things and see what, just asking yourself, like, do I have fun doing this? Does this excite me? Does this excite me? Does this light me up? Like just asking yourself that. And if that's the case, go with it. And it doesn't have to be, a plan that is for the rest of your life. I think that that question, especially when we're asked in high school, like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I can't believe that's a question kids are getting asked, because it's like, how do I know what I want to, like, why can't I do many different things? Like, it's so, you got to find this one career path and just follow it. And it's like, well, maybe right now I'm in my phase of life that I want to do book coaching, and this is where I'm at. I don't feel like there's anything else for me, but there could be. And I'll just go with that too. And that's cool.
There's so many things there, and I hope people were really listening and taking that in, that you don't necessarily need to know, but you need to try different things.
Yeah.
To be experimental. And also, I like what you said, that you don't like when teachers ask, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? But you just said, what do you want to do right now? And that's all you need to do to change the question. So change the question to open your mind. What do you want to do for the rest of your life right now?
Yeah.
And I think asking that question early on would prevent a mindset that many people get into. Many people get into the mindset is, I've been doing this. This is what I've been doing. I can't change. I'm afraid to change. But think if we asked all these kids back in school, what do you want to do with your life right now? And encourage the fact that right now might not be forever. Now fast forward to that person who's been in the job for so long and doesn't want to change. They'll say, you know what? I do remember that way back in school, they said right now. So you may have just given a gem to the educators out there. And it's very important. And it was when it came to doing what you need to do for the rest of your life or finding that out, it was Jay Shetty. I remember I watched an interview with him, and I don't know if you know who Jay Shetty is.
Oh, yeah. Love him.
A lot of people do, and then a ton of people don't, but I think it's most people that are into personal development, almost anyone knows who he is. He was asked the same question about purpose, and he said, pick 8 different things that you want to try, and then block off your weekends and do them all. And the worst case scenario is that you will find 8 things that you hated doing.
Exactly.
What if you did like one of those things? And then he says, ask yourself 3 questions. He said, when you find something that is a maybe, ask yourself, did I like it? Why did I like it? And would I like to do it again? And that's the path to finding your purpose. Like you said, being experimental, he just had a very detailed way on how to do it. But you said the same thing. We have to try things to find purpose. And I'm glad you mentioned that. And here you are. So why now is this your main passion right now? What is it about helping people write their books that fires you up?
I think I was like this, and it's so interesting. If I didn't try all these different things, like I wouldn't know this at such a young age. Like I remember having this conversation with my boyfriend, and he said, Ashley, you found this like key to life that people are always looking for, like this satisfaction that you have in what you're doing. People are always searching for that. And I feel so much gratitude that I've experienced this, and I'm not even 28 yet. I'll be 28 later this year. So it's like, I feel so lucky, and I feel so, lucky is not even the word. It's just, I feel so grateful because I've been able to find it. And part of that is I feel like I'm here in this lifetime to, just like I went on this journey of overcoming speaking my truth and telling my story and being comfortable to use my voice and to know that, I have a story to share. I have a message, and my words can impact people. I feel like a part of why I'm here is to spread that onto other people and allow people to see and empower other men, women to see that they too have so much that they can give to the world, that our stories matter. And that's the thing that I tell people all the time is something could have happened yesterday, and that is a story to tell. And there is something in there that could be a little nugget for somebody else. Like, that's the power in our words and using our words and in sharing our story. It's what allows us to create connection, and I feel like that's why I'm so passionate, is because I went on this journey. I know what it's like to be so afraid to like speak your truth and to tell your story, and having experienced it, and having experienced what it's like to put my book out there. It really does it's something that lights me up so much, seeing other people go and then publish their books. Like, I get so excited, whether it's people I work with personally or just people that I know. Like, even when you were writing your book, I was like, yes, like, I'm so excited. I can't wait. And I'm always like that person who's at the book launch, because I know how exciting it is. It's such a great journey to go on.
Awesome. And yes, I remember when you came to my book launch. And the thing about writing a book, and the reason why it's great that you've created the community, and we'll make sure we tell everybody where to find you as well, is because now people have other people around them that are writing a book, and you create that feeling of, okay, someone else is doing it, let me do it. Someone else is doing it, let me do it. And it's a friend of mine, and you know him too, Vera. He once told me that when you want to do something, get around people that are doing it, because it normalizes it for you. So when I wanted to get into professional speaking, it seemed like, okay, this is crazy. But then I started registering as a guest with CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. And I got around people that were just like me, that were speaking and that were being paid to speak, and it normalized it. And what normalizing does is that it gives you belief. So what you've done is you're creating belief in authors, because they're all people that are starting just where you started, and you're helping them in a group write their own books. So
and that goes with anything, right? Like, it can be whether you are writing a book, if you're speaking, but like it can be anything. If you are wanting to start a podcast, you're wanting to start a business, people often say go hire a coach, which absolutely. But if you also don't have that money right now to invest into a coach, find a community. There's communities for everything now. That's the power in social media. That's what it is. It's about creating this community. And so you can absolutely immerse yourself. And that's the thing, what we said at the very beginning, your environment, who you surround yourself with is who you become. And you'll watch, like, if you want to start your own podcast, you're going to have a successful podcast if you're surrounding yourself with the people who are doing it too.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Everything, speaking, writing, everything. And one thing I love about your group is that I saw a virtual book launch with one of your authors, and that celebrating people when they write their books. Tell me about why we need to celebrate our wins, and what that has to do with feeling good about yourself. Because a lot of times you'll hear people say, you got to celebrate your wins, and give yourself a reward when you hit a goal or something like that. And I'll be honest, most of the time I brush it off. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I got to get to the next thing.
Yep.
But tell me, because it doesn't always sink into my brain. Why do we need to celebrate?
And I'm the same too. I'll tell you, I'm not perfect at this either. But I did talk about this. So I love that you're bringing this up, because I talked about it, celebrating as a chapter in the book. And it was just, for me, at the beginning of where I was at, celebrating, and what that kind of looked like. I have a notebook, and I still have it, where I just spent some time just like writing down this. I called it my fuel list. That's what I called it. And it was just, I asked myself, what are all the things that I know that I could help people with? And that was in a way of me being able to celebrate all my wins and like where I'm at. And ultimately what that did was, especially if I was ever in a time, in a moment where I was experiencing doubt, and I really struggled with doubt as well. Like there was just a lack in confidence, and there was a lack in believing in myself. And so whenever I was in this moment of like just pure self-doubt, I would open up this notebook and I would just like do this little check, and I would just reread it. And that's also part of now having, you know, a physical book is just, it's, I look at it, I'm like, Ashley, you, wow. Like, you know what I mean? It's just that moment of taking it in. And this fuel list just allowed me to quiet the limiting beliefs that I was hearing. You know, the little voices, the inner voices, those inner critics that come up all the time. And also, if you look at celebrating, there's that aspect, you know, to really honor yourself and everything that you've gone through. The other side, though, is having gratitude for what you're having in this moment. That's what celebrating is. Celebrating is, even if you're, let's say, for example, so I actually talked about this, or I never really put it out there, but I wanted to, was last year I hit 10K in my business, right? And it was, the reason that I share that is because I just never thought that it was possible for me. Like I was on the verge of giving up on,
by the way.
Thank you. But I was on this verge of giving up on entrepreneurship. This was me trying to put out this program, going life coaching, and then I transitioned into book coaching. This is the power in when you're doing what you're meant to do and something that lights you up. Things just happen and they flow. And I remember internally being super excited, but I was also like, didn't want to brag about it and all that fun stuff. But in saying that, in that moment of celebrating myself, I am having so much gratitude for how I was able to achieve that and what happened for me to receive that milestone. And that comes down to being so grateful for my clients, for, it could be down to the little things like having the internet to be able to connect with people. Like there's all of this. And the more that you're in gratitude, the more that you can receive. So it's not just celebrate your wins. It's like celebrate and be so grateful so that you can end up receiving more. Like there's just so much deeper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So celebration, in terms of, okay, yeah, celebrate your wins, and then also be grateful for what you have, even if it's not a huge win, even if it's not exactly where you want to be, celebrate and have gratitude along the way, and you'll get there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So I love that you said that we were going to be celebrating the little things, and I'm going to try to do that more. And
Yeah.
I like what you created. You call it the fuel list. Is that
Yeah.
what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay, the fuel list. It reminds me of something I heard, and someone said that when you are feeling down about yourself, start to collect a compliment list. So
Yeah.
anytime someone compliments you, write it down. And it sounds like it's similar to what you created, a fuel list, something that gives you fuel.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling down about yourself, you go to that list of compliments and you read them and you say, okay, at some point, someone felt this way about me. You know,
Yeah.
they may feel down about themselves right in this moment, but these are the good things people have said about me, because it's so easy to forget the good things. And I remember I asked in a speech once, I said, can you remember a time when you failed? And then I asked people to go back into their life and go back to remembering all the failures. And people could go way further back with the failures than they could with the successes.
Yeah.
Right? So you can remember all these bad things, but you forget the compliments. So it's about reading those. And for me as a speaker and for you as an author, that might be testimonials, right? So you collect testimonials or good things people have said about the things you've done to give you fuel to go on. So,
yeah. And what you could even do too is, you know, if you just have like, especially if you put out a book somewhere, and you're receiving these messages on, let's say it's like Instagram or Facebook, like just take a screenshot and make a folder in your phone, and just go back to it, revisit it.
I literally did that. That's what I do with my testimonials. It's actually in a folder on my desk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and it allows you to, I feel like that moment of you going back to, because if you've received something like a testimonial or a case study or something along those lines, there's something behind it, right? So if I'm receiving things from my book, like I'm thinking about my book and everything that I went through in order to put out this book out there. And so it also at the same time allows you to see like all the things you've been able to accomplish. And it's part of that is that if you've done something once and you've overcome it once, even if it appears again in a similar way, well, guess what? You've already, like, you're familiar, you know, you can get it through it again. Like the hardest of hardest things. If you've gone through something that's so hard, other things are just going to be like a walk in the park, and you've got this. And it's kind of that, also that reminder too, to say, I've been through, you know, maybe even harder things. I can get through this too.
I love it. I love it. We talked about so many things today, and I'm very grateful that you came on today. Before we finish, tell me either your favorite quote, your favorite book, or both, and why.
Okay, my favorite quote right now, I don't know who said it though. I think there's like quotes that I tell myself, so they're not really like the famous quotes, but two things that I tell myself on a regular basis. Everybody starts somewhere, so that's helped me through last year in starting my business. You know, if you want to have everything figured out, you feel like I need to know everything. You don't. Everyone starts somewhere. And then the other thing is, one day is not a day of the week, is something that I tell people all the time. So if you're ever wanting to do something and you say one day, it's not a day of the week, so choose another day. And then favorite book. I've been talking about this lately, but my favorite book, the book that changed my life, was The Four Agreements. I talk about it in my book. Like, it's the book that I think about all the time, and what I've come to understand, because I've recommended it so much and I feel like people don't have that same experience. I'm like, it happens. There's a book out there. There's a certain timing for everything, but it was the book for where I was at, you know, coming from a place of taking things like personally. Like, there was just so much I learned from that, and I gained so much confidence in trusting that I could create my reality and I could be in control of my life. I loved that book so much.
I love it too. Great book, and he's written a few really, really good books.
Yeah.
Okay, Ashley, well, thank you for being on here. Tell people where they can find you and how they can connect with you.
Yes, I am the Studio Press. You'll see myself and my co-author, co-founder, Tina, as well. So we are Studio Press. We're really creating our community here on Instagram, and that's the best place. And also the studiopress.co is our website as well.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Ashley, for being on here and being my guest on the Rise podcast.
Thanks so much, Kwesi.